Welcome to the Dice Forsaken podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jono.
And I'm the other, Jackson. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in. This is episode number 4. Apparently that makes us a successful podcast or something.
And we've had more than 2 people listen to it the whole way through.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'll take it. I think it's a good start. So, yeah. Thank you for everyone who's listened, for hanging around for this far into the journey.
Yeah.
Now, I think we kind of have a bit of a different topic to talk about. I mean, I know our last couple of episodes have been pretty bolt action dominant, but we've got something fresh and new and exciting and very much your baby, Jono, to have a chat about.
Yeah. Last week we alluded to, well, we said flat out that this month's episode would not be on bolt action. We were going to talk about another game, so here we are. We're going to talk about Baron's War, or the Baron's War, Specifically 2nd edition, which is not new anymore. It's been out for 12 odd months, so we've been talking about it. I started looking at getting into Baron's War in V1. I was particularly suckered in by the Warhost rules and figures, mostly the figures, but then the rules as well. So I splashed out and backed some elven characters and stuff, and I've had them sitting in my I should really paint these list of things to do. But then they announced Baron's War V2, and another one of my friends said that he'd split the starter box with me, so we did that. And I think we're sort of up to about 8 to 10 players now, or people interested in playing in Perth. So
with figures, I mean, I think you and I are probably the only two or I think there's 3 of us that have played games, but
yeah. Well, that we know anyway. Look, let's not exclude the rest of Perth. Perth is
absolutely
not that small.
In our friend group.
In our circle, yeah. So if you're listening and you're in Perth, please reach out if you want to play, or if you have played Baron's War. Yeah, so here we are. Jackson and I have played a couple of games. Jackson managed to squeeze another one in with another one of his mates, so that's good. And we're just going to give you the rundown. But before we do that, Jackson, what have you been up to in your hobby over the last month?
Well, Jono, I think we actually need to cover our admin, first.
That's correct.
Yeah, so, the inevitable admin, if you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We appreciate your support. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcast or Spotify Podcast, please give us a rating and leave a review. And lastly, if you can find us on Facebook under the Dice Forsaken podcast, and realistically, unless you're watching on YouTube where we may have slotted some photos in, your best place to see what we're hobbying and what we're talking about is very much on that Facebook page. Otherwise, your few precious seconds helping us out with this keeps us send our hobby jibber jabber, as Jono says, to the world more effectively.
And Jackson, you read that significantly better than I do.
I have got a script right in front of me, and I'm literally just reading it off verbatim, my friend.
Yeah, I had it last month too. I still couldn't get it right. But no. It
probably helps that, you wrote it, so I feel obligated to stick as closely to what you say, as opposed to, when you're the one who's written it, and you're like, oh, just change this, or chop and change that, or, whatever.
Ad-lib it, yeah. Nah, it's good. All right, so Jackson, what have you been up to?
Right, so my big project... I've been very busy on the hobby front this last month on a number of projects. So obviously, bolt action is near and dear at the moment. I am busy prepping for WTC, which I really can't talk about. Painting some figures, putting together an army list, playing some test games. I mean, I've got a day on the weekend where I hopefully will get 2 or 3 games in. I've had a couple of games already. I've been relatively slow to start. Normally I'd have started earlier, but life has had a way of intervening. So I've been busy on the bolt action front, and our good friend and my fellow co-TO John Beeson here in Perth, we've started on the prep for our annual mega narrative game. So for those interested, that's basically we're privileged that we get to run it out of our club, Outpost 6030, on their open day, which is a free day where they hire out the hall and everyone can come down and just play whatever. So we use that as an opportunity, with the club's blessing, to set up a big single table, 20-odd player, 20,000+ point armies, on a single table, and play out a big game. So this year the theme is Sea Lion. There's team captains, there's assigned orders, there's lots of funky objectives, lots of secret knowledge for each side. We've started prepping that, and John yesterday actually and this morning has sent me the first drafts for our table maps for how we want to play the mission. That's been my sort of admin type wargaming kind of related stuff. And then aside from that, the stuff I can talk about hobby-wise is I've been really hammering out more orcs, actually to play Baron's War with at the moment, because I have...
Filthy orcsuses.
Yeah, well, we'll get into this when we get to talking about Baron's War and figures and stuff, but I am notoriously hard to get into new games, and one of the conditions for me starting Baron's War was that I had to be able to make do with the figures I had until I decided I liked the game. And then once I decided I liked the game, which I have, then I would start investing in armies and start thinking about what I want to pull together a force. But in the meantime, I've pulled together a force of orcs. So I've painted about 40-something odd orcs and a couple of monsters, mostly Lord of the Rings metals and Andrew Medbury's at Medbury Miniatures metal orcs, and converting and kit bashing a whole stack of bits and pieces. I've done about 40 odd of those since the start of the year, and just tried to keep it really super simple with the color scheme. So I'm knocking out, a few figures every week, and it's a super simple color scheme that I can mass produce. So it's all the metallics are dry brushed / rust effects. Most of the other colors are kind of base coat, kind of wash or a layer, and then a final highlight, a layer, and then a final highlight, just to keep it simple. But yeah, that's been good, because I've been redoing basically all of my old plastic orcs from my Lord of the Rings army. I've replaced every one of them with metals. If anyone wants 40 or so odd GW plastic orcs for next to nothing, I'm happy to flog them off. But yeah, it's just replacing that and updating my Lord of the Rings army to also then multi-purpose it for Baron's War and for other game systems, namely Dragon Rampant and Saga. So yeah, that's pretty much me. One thing I have been really proud of is, if anyone's been following the Facebook page, when this goes out, it'll be about a week and a bit ago, I had just finished converting myself up a new captain / baron for my orcs out of the Lord of the Rings Shaman on Warg. I'd seen a conversion back on the One Ring forum many moons ago, where basically he has a staff sticking out and he's carrying a set of heads, and basically they'd cut the staff out of his hand, replaced it with a sword, so it looks like he's kind of holding up a set of severed heads as trophies, and they'd done a head swap on him. So I've pretty much done that and added a shield and then converted the foot model the same, so he has kind of almost like a gladiator, "Are you not entertained?" kind of pose. So that's something I've been really proud of, because I don't do a lot of really complicated kit bashing, and while it's not super complicated, it was fun to do something really out of my comfort zone. So yeah, how about yourself, Jono? I know I actually just rambled for probably a good 5 minutes there.
Yeah, so hobby for me this last month, not as much as I'd like. It seems to be a common thing for me, but that's alright. I got my Baron finished for Baron's War on horse and foot. I've painted up one of the footsore William Marshalls with the helmet on, so I'm pretty happy with that. I also managed to acquire the special edition priest figure from the events last year, so I've got him painted up as well. I'm very happy with how they've turned out. Similar to Jackson, I've tried to keep them fairly simple, painting wise, base layer, highlight, shading, this typical sort of thing. Trying out the Vallejo True Metallic Metals on them. Very nice. I like them.
I really rate those paints.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Like, I've literally just used them for a mix of dry brushing and layering and stuff, and they are amazing to work with.
Super easy to work with. I've got my archers. I've got male armoured archers from the Red Army in the starter kit. They're par done, and yeah, I've got a bunch primed and some metal done on bits and pieces as I've had left over in the pot on the palette. So I've just been painting up bits and pieces. Outside of that's all my Baron's War stuff. Outside of that, the other day I was sitting here and I had a need to build, so I did start building a SAS Northwest Europe Jeep for another British bolt action army, and then I've started sort of pottering through. I've got a bunch of British para sprues, so I've just been pottering through building some SAS. I thoroughly enjoy building plastic models, so yeah, it's pretty easy for me to just sit there and smash out a couple of guys and relax doing that. So
nothing more rewarding than assembling figures. I mean, I'm a sucker for metals. I prefer metals over plastics, but they're really you don't have to think about it. You can just plug away and you hand it with something super cool with a relatively minor time investment.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, I've got a couple of Jeeps now. I've got another one to build at some point.
Just a couple, Jono?
Yeah, plastic ones. Yeah, I've got one more to build. We don't talk about the other ones I've just ordered.
How many is that?
I don't count Jeeps. You just don't count Jeeps.
That sounds like a cop-out, Jono.
I know. I don't actually know how many I have. And then I've got 30 para bodies, 30 or so. I've acquired a couple in a spare bits trade at some point, so I've got 30 odd para bodies to build up, so they'll all be turned into SAS, and I'll have a...
That's a lot of
fairly
SAS.
hefty... It's a lot of SAS.
Especially at like 18 or 19 points a pop.
They might not quite all get turned into SAS, but there'll be a decent number.
Yeah. And to be fair, like when you do paras, I mean, maybe you'll want to slot some in alongside your Arnhem Heroes paras when you do those.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. Yeah. All right.
Oh, awesome.
I think that's hobby covered. It's hobby covered for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that brings us to our next topic of the conversation, which I guess is the whole news, new rules, minis, hobby stuff kind of page, kind of section.
Well, Empress just keep adding to their Arnhem Heroes range, which is never good, and I may have 2 Jeeps coming.
So that's what? Does that make 7 Jeeps in your collection or 10?
I'll have 5 SAS Jeeps.
Just 5 SAS ones.
And I've got about 6 para ones, plus 2 regular British transport Jeeps, so I don't know, something like that.
Oh dear.
I never thought I'd buy a Jeep, and here we are.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of jokes we could make out of that, given your love of vehicles.
Yeah.
You're the poster boy. I bought a Jeep.
I've always been a patrol man.
Listen all the way, hey? Yeah, that's a lot of Jeeps, man.
It's a lot of Jeeps.
So Empress is adding more figures, did you say?
Yeah. Oh, they just keep every once in a while. Well, they dropped the Polston gun not too long ago, and they did the howitzer a bit before that. So they've done a few releases to add on to the Arnhem range since that dropped. So
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
It's nice that that's getting to the point as a range where you could buy just their figures and you have a full army. Because the issue with a lot of the smaller metal producers, and like I say this as someone who absolutely loves, for example, the Eureka figures, and Eureka are better than most because they actually do a lot of the support weapons, but like a lot of the metal ranges, if you're buying Artisan or Crusader or, some of the Eureka ranges, like you have all the stuff you want for an infantry force. You're going to have like some machine guns, some generally up to like light and medium mortars, so 50 to like 80 mil mortars, but you really struggle to find like complete ranges that have maybe some vehicles, some transports, some guns, that kind of stuff. So it's cool that they're fleshing that out.
Yeah. What has caught your eye lately, Jackson?
Look, at some point in the next couple of weeks, I will have my first game of Dragon Rampant 2nd Edition.
Yep.
So I've been working last year on a Lizardman army to double purpose for that kind of generic fantasy wargaming. So mates have finally got copies of the 2nd ed book. There was only 3 copies in Perth. I will probably do an order through Amazon or something to get my copy, but in the meantime, I'll play with their book. So that looks like a vast improvement on the 1st edition. Just an all-round better game, better fleshed out. Previously, Dragon Rampant was quite limited, and it had a very limited selection of unit types. So that'll be cool to play. That's very much a beer and pretzels kind of social war game, and it's a game that plays better with more stuff. So like their recommended game, it's kind of like Black Powder in the sense that like one force is kind of not enough to give an engaging game because the rules are that simple that things become very clear cut, whereas the more moving pieces you add, the more the fact that the rules are simple really shines.
Yeah, cool.
So that I'll be getting some games in of that. As far
that's your regular gaming group that you're playing that with, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's with the Monday nights.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like when people say to me at Outpost, "Oh, you only ever play Bolt Action," I was like, "Well, I only ever play Bolt Action at Outpost. I play a lot of other stuff outside of it. I play a lot of Gaslands, a lot of Dragon and Lion Rampant. We played a lot of the kind of epic scale Black Powder and Pike and Shot rules. That's where I probably get the variety of gaming that I play in, and that's where I've played Frostgrave. It's where I've played some of the other rule sets that I have a bit of an interest in, and where I originally played Dead Man's Hand.
Yeah, cool.
Back in 1st edition before 2nd edition came out, and it picked up at Outpost.
Yeah.
So that's probably catching my eye for the short to immediate future as far as new stuff comes out. As far as other hobby news, I mean, on the Bolt Action front, we've just seen a preview of the Italian book and confirmation that there will be a Armies of the Axis and the Allies from a lot of the minor nations. So that means that kind of the start of next year, I'll hopefully be able to get my Hungarians on the table, which will be awesome.
Yeah,
the Italian rules are looking really good and really themey.
Yeah.
The co-belligerent forces and the Republican Italians look fun. I don't know, like, the value in those lists will be what's actually in each of the lists, but the national rules at least look quirky and interesting and different. So that's cool to see that coming out. And then the big one, tying in what we're talking about today, is obviously at some point in the very near future, the King John supplement for Barrowman's War's coming out. Once I get my grubby hands on that, that's when I'm going to make a call on exactly what kind of force I'm going to collect for Barron's War. Now I've got the start of a grasp on rules. My figure purchases will be based on that book. And that looks like it's got about 7 different army lists or retinue lists, which will add substantially to the game.
Yeah, they did a bit of an article on the retinues coming out, and yes, 5, 7, something like that. I can't remember the exact.
Yeah, and a lot of them sound like they have quite different playstyles and perhaps some quite different unit types. So yeah, that's probably a conversation for later in this episode, though.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that covers us for new stuff. Hey, I guess it's time to get onto the main event.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know what Barron's War is, it's a tabletop game depicting skirmish combat in the mid-medieval time period, particularly focusing on the 1200s. And more particular than that is focusing around the first Barron's War. V1 came out in 2019, and that then subsequently got a couple of expansions which took it to the Middle East. That was the Outremer book. They did one for Robin Hood and that sort of stuff, which was Death and Taxes, and then they did another expansion called Conquest, I believe, although I'm doubting myself right now. That was the Viking invasion of England, is my understanding.
Yeah, so that they covered a pretty good chunk of that kind of late Middle Ages, early medieval. Realistically, the rule set probably does everything. Like, with a little bit of rejigging, you could probably do pretty much everything from the fall of Rome right through to the introduction of gunpowder weapons.
Yeah,
in Europe. Probably the best way to, probably also to touch on the history. I mean, it's really, the initial stuff is set around the First Barons' War, which is the lifetime of King John.
Yeah, that's right.
Which, for the popular culture, kind of easily accessible, everyone's heard of it. That's who Robin Hood is fighting against in every single Robin Hood movie or piece of Robin Hood related literature that you've seen. And it kind of covers the First Barons' War, which really is when, after King John comes to power, and you know what, I have a slightly above average, but still very much school level understanding of this period of history.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, we're very much not experts. But basically, King John upset all of his barons. They rose up in a revolt, started the First Barons' War, which concludes with the signing of the Magna Carta, which, again, if you've done a lot of discussion about history of democracy or that kind of stuff at school, you would have heard about. What they tend to neglect to forget is that King John then pretty much immediately broke it.
Yeah. It then leads on to the rejection of Magna Carta,
which
then leads into the Second Barons' War, and then the re-signing of Magna Carta.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And obviously that's then in his son's lifetime, Henry the First, Henry the Second, Henry the Third.
I think it's the third.
Henry the Third. Yeah.
There's going to be someone out there who comments and says you're both wrong. It's not any of those.
Yeah.
But I think it's the third. Yeah.
My understanding of the Plantagenet dynasty, and I'm pretty sure this is the Plantagenet dynasty, is pretty poor.
Yeah.
It's the big hits on the name Edward Longshanks, who's Henry's son, and King Richard and King John, and that's really about it.
Yeah, and Outremer deals with Richard the Lionheart.
So it's really that Third Crusade kind of era.
Yeah. So it's very much the Middle East stuff is very much Third Crusade time period more than anything else. So yeah, so that's a bit of the history from our pretty agricultural knowledge of that time period. Now, I said that it deals with skirmish combat. It's not really skirmish games like what's sort of become the norm in more modern tabletop games. It's very much small army battling off to the side of larger forces. So it's not the single model activation type of game. It's small bands, sort of infantry is from 4 upwards and cavalry is from 2 upwards in your groups. So yeah, still group activation, but you're sort of looking at, I don't know, my 500-point army is 20-something models. You probably double that if you went all foot in a 1,000-point army. If you start putting horses in, particularly bartered horses, it drops figure numbers.
Yeah.
They're expensive.
Yeah. Probably the best way to look at it, and the way I've always thought about game sizes, is that the overwhelming consensus for skirmish games in our day and age is what I would call squad skirmish. So it's sort of like 5 to 10 figures, lots of rules, very crunchy, very granular, lots of special effects and tokens and stuff. Like the kind of more mainstream, and Baron's War kind of fits it within more of what I would nickname kind of, and this is probably the X40K / bolt action player coming out of me, but like platoon skirmish.
Yes.
It's like 50 odd, it's like sort of 20 to 60 dudes.
Yeah.
And there's probably, it's not just one or two cohesive unit types. It's probably a bit of a mishmash of different unit types. You know, if you were playing a modern game, there might be a tank or a vehicle. In this, it's going to be pretty much cavalry and infantry. But yeah, it's that kind of 50 to 60 odd figures at the most, sort of 20 to 30 at the least.
Yep, that's about what I was saying. A bit more on the game. It's played on a 4x3 table. It uses D10s and D6s, but primarily your rolling is done on D10s. We've been playing V2 just out of the book, no add-ons or anything. There is free PDF conversions for all the V1 books if you're interested in those time periods. So far we've been playing 500 points, which has been pretty fun and achievable for building and painting. Yeah, that's about it in terms of the sort of overall of the game.
Yeah, it's an alternate activation game, so it's not like Bolt Action where it's random activation, and it's not like, say, a 40k type game where it's a you go I go system. It's basically every unit has a number of activations. Obviously, armies are kind of split into like normal units and then command retinues. So they're like a unit with a hero attached. Obviously, the heroes are often like single wound models. They're fairly squishy. It's not really a hero hammer type, skirmish game. Basically, your normal units generally have one activation, and then your command retinues with heroes attached to them might have 2 or 3. Basically, they can give out farm out activations to the units around them potentially, but no unit can ever take more than 2 actions. And so you activate a unit, your opponent activates a unit, you activate a unit, and obviously you can then potentially double activate some stuff with your command retinues. So it has a really engaging kind of activation system that's similar but kind of different to what the standard is.
Yeah, it's not random, so it's not quite that exciting. But the movie unit is definitely more engaging than move your whole army and Alpha Strike Me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And like, I think you, having tried to play games where you spam units and you have more activations than your opponent, that's definitely an advantage. But what you find is that some of these units, because even large units are quite small, you can wind up with like some really fragile units that just shatter straight away.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as army construction goes, obviously, as you've said, Jono, like, your minimum squad size or unit size is 4 figures in a unit for infantry and 2 for cav. And basically, you then need to add a baron or a lord or a leader to one of them. And on top of that, basically, you need to spend 10% of your points on your kind of really naff, average, poor quality troops. And then there's an optional special rule, which is pretty much the only thing we have been playing with, which is that you can't spend more than a third of your points on archers or ranged weapons.
Ranged weapons, yeah.
Oh, and the other thing is your leader and his retinue can't have more than 200 and or can't have more than 50%, sorry, because we've been playing 500, that's 250 points, but can't have more than 50% of your points sunk into a leader, even in smaller games. So yeah, it's kind of a fairly open freeform system. I mean, you'd note that none of the unit sizes I've listed above have a unit cap. So you can fit, as long as you can fit models in coherency, you can take as many models in a unit as you like.
Yeah, and that's cool. I think that's one thing we both picked up very early, was that there is no unit caps. If you can fit 4 infantry, if you can fit them within 2 inches of the middle figure, you can have as many as you want. So I mean, yes, there is actually a cap, but it's a physical limitation as opposed to you can have 10 guys in a group.
Yeah, which I quite like as a system.
Yeah, and this time period, they didn't have that level of organisation, so it was very much just like, your archers probably would have all been together, or maybe in a couple of groups, depending on where they've come from within your estate or whatever. So, yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and you can have multiple heroes in different retinues. Obviously, one's got to be your overall commander, but yeah, it's kind of got a little bit of crunch to it. As you said, it's a D10 system, which is quite different.
The D10, it works well. I like the D10 system.
Yeah, it's a point of difference.
Yeah, historically have mostly played D6 systems. I think That's probably very common if you come from the 40K background or Games Workshop background. D10 I haven't really played too many of. I've played a couple of D20. D20 is swingy. I don't know if I love D20, but D10 seems to work quite nicely.
Yeah, I've been pretty impressed with it. And the only time you're going to roll a D6 is to determine your charge distance and force of charge, and then to count up your points of morale damage on units.
Yeah, and obviously game setup is all done on 3d6.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good point. So,
yeah. But that's a neither here nor there, really. At the end of the day, it's a D10 system. So.
Yeah, it's a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been really cool because it's just different. It's a point of difference. It makes crunching numbers quite easy because everything's a multiple of 10, then divided by whatever other numbers of dice rolls you need to make. So,
yeah. I like that it makes the weapon strength differential possible. Like, you have a +1 or a +2 for this or that different weapon.
And it feels really meaningful without being a super swing.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing I will note, is that for anyone starting out, there's a number of different unit types, but as a rule of thumb, all of your basic infantry use the exact same profile, and it changes based on their veterancy. So you have green troops, inexperienced troops, and then you have regulars and veterans.
Yeah.
And then basically the things that change it from unit to unit is the special rules that get layered on top and the weapons and equipment options.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. It means that remembering your base stats gets a lot easier because there's 3 levels to remember.
Yeah, or 4 levels, but 3 games in, I'm already starting to memorize the number of modifiers. You know, a guy in male is always going to have a 5-up save. A male, yeah. It's just nice and consistent. Yeah, and it means that there's a meaningful reason to upgrade units up and down.
Yeah, and there's a meaningful reason to put mail on a sergeant versus a padded armor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but without it being so overpowered.
Absolutely. I mean, if you play a D6 game, right? So I play Lord of the Rings, right? And there are ways you get +1 to hurt a target. So things like two-handed weapons and whatnot. Now, when you do those, if you can get a +1 on something, because of the way the dice damage rolls interact in that system, a +1 to damage can be kind of equivalent to being 2 or 3 points higher on the different stats. Whereas with this, a +1 is equivalent to kind of just being a +1. It scales really nicely.
Yeah, that's probably enough about us nerding out over maths and detail.
Yeah, I'm not a math fan, so I really don't know why I got excited about that. What forces have you been running, mate?
So I've been running the Red Retinue from the starter army primarily. Well, I say primarily. I've played 2 games. The first one I just played the native red list, which was good. I quite enjoyed that. But then, because I had the priest painted up, I wanted to run it, so I shuffled some stuff around and took that upgrade on my Baron. It didn't change the list too much. I think I effectively ended up dropping 1 archer or something and shuffling a couple of things around. It's a 4-point upgrade, and I was bang on 500, so...
What is in the Red Retinue for those who are not familiar with the game?
Jackson's going to put me on the spot. Yeah, that's right. Just looking it up, 2 seconds. The red list, here we go. So, it is a regular Baron with 5 knights. You get the banner upgrade with them. They've all got sword, mail, and a large shield. Yeah, so that ends up being a group of 6. You get 6 veteran sergeants, which have falchions, padded armor, and medium shields. Bowmen, 6 of with bow and mail. And then you get 8 levy with hand weapons. So they're just your chaff troops at green. So, yeah.
It's a pretty good selection of different troops for a 500-point sort of half-size game.
Yeah, and the requirement to have the 10% green is nice. I mean, everyone wants to spend their points on cool units, but it's kind of nice to sort of ground it in that reality of having some just random people that you've had to recruit to come and fight. So
yeah, absolutely.
What were you running, Jackson?
Well, I was playing my Filthy Orcs as a proxy force, and I've had a slightly different list in every game I've played, just as I've been fiddling with different things and as I've been painting up different figures. But the core of it's pretty much been sort of 6 to 8 knights, either taken as regular or veteran, with a Baron. The Baron and them all have a mail and a heavy shield and just swords.
and then like a couple of either one unit of sort of 8 archers or 2 units of 4 or 5 archers, just kind of taking it regular, just with bows. A unit of either 6 or 8 green levy with hand weapons, and then a unit of 4 sergeants with 2-handed axes and mail. And that's kind of given me a pretty good taste for the game.
Yeah. I've got some random figures in the box that I built, which at some point I'll get some more plastics from Wargames Atlantic and add on to have some of those other troop options. I had enough of the futsal character models that I was able to sub out some bodies for my Baron and stuff like that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying out some 2-handed axes and stuff like that. I think that'll be pretty cool.
I found them really interesting because, like, I went into the Facebook page and I was just kind of scrolling through, and someone would put up a post saying, like, why would you ever bother taking 2-handed axes? I was like, I've painted up some of these. I want to play them. I don't care what someone says. So I ran them as a really small team, and what I've been doing is I've been kind of keeping them hanging back behind my Baron and his retinue of knights. And like the Baron and the retinue of knights go in, I burn all of their actions as quickly as I can, trying to attack units. And then once I've kind of baited a stack of activations from the opponent, I double activate, if I can, the sergeants into my opponent. Because if you can get them to attack a target after they've activated, you can actually do a horrendous amount of damage with them.
And if you can do it after they're broken, oh my goodness.
Yeah. When you break a unit, which means you've kind of forced it to fail a morale check, so you need to cause a fair bit of damage to it, your hits auto-hit, and your opponent can't use shield saves, and they have to just use their normal saves, and they can't react. So one of the things this game does is that when you attack an opponent, they often, if they haven't done their action, or they have a spare action from a commander nearby, they can react. So they can defend, or they can attack back, or if you're charging a shooting unit, they can choose to shoot you on the way in. Whereas like if you break a unit, they don't get to do that, which means that they become very squishy.
And the auto hit hurts because you basically charge in, you get, your 4 or 5 attacks or whatever, and that's 4 or 5 saves they have to make. You don't have to roll a hit. So
yeah, absolutely. And like, especially when you start looking at some of the different unit types, right? Like mail slows down infantry, whereas not having armor doesn't. Like if units in mail move 4 inches, units without any armor move 6. And the reason that starts becoming important is there's like, cool, so your levy, your really poor quality, low damage units, they actually move quite fast. And you go, well, these really poor quality green troops that I don't really like, that I can't really get any use out of, aside from maybe sitting on an objective, what they become like amazing for chasing down knights. So like you break a unit of like a medium or small size unit of knights, and then you run it down with a unit of like 8 or 9 levy, and the levy will auto hit. And then suddenly your opponent's rolling 9 saves, and you can pretty much guarantee you're going to kill that unit you've mobbed.
Yeah, one of my comments to someone who was asking me about Baron's War the other week was, it's a fairly simple game to pick up, but it looks like there's lots of depth in it tactically and at the game as well, just because there's so much ability to combo moves and combo units.
And chain activations across different combinations of units. And it's actually kind of like bolt action in a way, right? So the core thing in bolt action is sequencing. So it's how you activate your units, in what order, and what activations you give them, right? Baron's War is the same. So it is, which units do I activate, what activations do I give them, and the actual granularity and interest in the game comes from how you combine those things.
It's pretty interesting so far. And I think it will be interesting going on. So you've come to us after some pretty hectic technical difficulties we've found throughout the week. We lost a bit of the recording, so here we are on another night trying to make up for what we lost.
So where were we, Jono?
We should say it was Jackson's audio. Jono's audio's there, but listening to Jono drone onto himself in half a conversation's no fun. Anyway, let's move on.
I think we can probably leave that where it is and move on to our next question, which was, and this was one that was posed to you, Jono, which is, and I think it's quite a pertinent question given, we're a week and a half out from a major announcement, for example, from Atomic Mass Games about Shatterpoint and how they'll no longer be supporting it on the level that they were. And, all these games that are kind of flashes in the pan. But the question posed to you was, is the game stable?
where is it at? Can we rely on this game still being here and being played by a community, or reasonable sized community, sort of 3 or 4 years down the track, or is it just going to be another flash in the pan kind of?
Yeah, so I had a bit of a look at this because, like you said, the question was posed to me. My instant sort of reply to that was, yeah, it seems pretty stable. I did a bit of digging and I went back and had a look. V1 was released through a Kickstarter in 2019, so it's got sort of that 5 years of pedigree to it now. It's just gone into V, which is the release that happened last year, and Wargames Atlantic now support it. And I believe there was some talk anyway that it was their biggest release they've ever done. I don't know if you'll hear this a second time in this podcast, but it went so well that they actually had to pull the starter box off the shelf just because they couldn't fulfill order quantities for vendors as well as people who are buying direct off their website. So they just went, look, we're going to have to pull this off sale for a little bit, catch up, make sure that we can fulfill orders that have already been placed, and then we'll get it back out there. So I think that's pretty good. It shows that there's plenty of people out there who are interested in the time period and the game.
You don't start plasticizing a game, even if it is a historical game where you've got other markets for figures. You don't start plasticizing a game unless it's selling well. You don't do a second edition unless it's selling well. You don't update supplements and compile them all into one massive supplement, a la the upcoming King John supplement. You don't do that unless it's doing well. Most of the games that have been done by Footsore have had continuous support. Obviously, most games do really well at their launch, and then it's really whether things happen down the track as to whether it's going to continue to grow. But yeah, I think there's definitely, and there's room for the scope of this game to expand. I mean, we were chatting about this, I think, earlier in the episode, where I said to you, like, the rule set actually works pretty well with some minor differences from everything from kind of the ancient era right through to kind of the introduction of gunpowder firearms into Europe. I could see this being set up for the 100 Years' War quite easily. They did a supplement already for what they call the Complex supplement, as you said earlier, which was for the kind of Norman invasion of England. So yeah, I think I think it's stable enough, and it will come down to your individual community as to whether it grows or develops. Yeah.
As with any game, really, it really comes down to what other local people are interested in playing.
The other thing, Jono, which I think perhaps is a bit of a mindset of the non-historical gamer, is that when you look at a lot of these historical games, they have a lot longer longevity without support than some of these IP games that can be quite unstable. I mean, as we're saying, the Atomic Mass games, Shatterpoint stuff, I mean, that's only around for as long as they hold the IP and they're making enough money off it to warrant it.
Yeah.
Whereas a historical game, you can put the rules out into the world, your company can go bankrupt, no one can be officially supporting it, and people can still get figures for it, people can still probably get a hold of the rules. Like, I think as a thing, historical games tend to be more stable anyway.
Yeah, I think you're probably right there. And there's also less of that new edition sort of cycle that happens with particularly some like non-historical games.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the 3-year GW cycle on every single one of their games comes to mind immediately.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah. No, so I think that covers that topic pretty well.
Yeah. So, what kind of, speaking of sort of multiple figure ranges, what figures would you be looking at for Baron's War, and who produces miniatures for it?
So, like we've alluded to, Wargames Atlantic took over support, through however the contract worked with Andy Hobday, moving over to Wargames Atlantic, or starting to work direct for them. They have taken on support for the Baron's War, and they've published the V2 rules, but they've also plasticized a whole bunch of figures, like we were just talking about. They've put the dollars down, they've made the investment. Now, their entire range is based around the footsore medals, so when they've sculpted them, they've tried to keep that sort of same character to the figures, and I think they've done a pretty good job.
I would argue that they're Wargames Atlantic's best plastics. I mean,
they probably are.
We've seen their World War II stuff, and that is, they're fine for getting troopers on the table for something like Bolt Action, where you just want cheap figures down on the table, but like some of the detail is not that flash in terms of accuracy. Whereas all of this is just amazing.
Yeah, we had the discussion when I was at your place one time, Jackson, doing some building of horses, and you being a bit of a knowledgeable person when it comes to riding horses, yeah, actually holding swords correctly and spears correctly for how you would hold them on a horse to not break your wrist.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like things like the way the reins are connected and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
and also like they're not static poses.
No,
which
they are very dynamic.
Some of Wargames Atlantic's other figures can be a little bit static or wooden.
Yeah.
These are just lovely. Like, they're by far the best range of figures that Wargames Atlantic does. And I would encourage people to get a hold of them. I definitely will be getting a hold of some for my collection when I start shifting over to building a force. But who else? Like, who else does plastics, Jono?
For plastics, you're looking at Victrix. They've got a pretty good range of plastics for the Western nation, or, Western European powers. They also have probably one of the few ranges of medieval Middle Eastern plastics. So, yeah, they've got a pretty good range of that. Then you've also got Fireforge Games. They have a range, a few sets of the Teutonic Knights and stuff like that, plus some other medieval ones. So there's a pretty good, between the three companies, and I've seen some comparisons, and they all scale pretty well together. I've only got the Wargames Atlantic, so I can't speak from experience, but from everything I've seen, they scale well together. And yeah, so between the three, you've got some pretty good choices and a wide variety.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually fiddling, because we're recording this a few days later, I had our friend Seb has managed to pull together a force, mainly I think for Saga, but obviously it'll also double for Baron's War, of the Fireforge plastics.
Yeah.
And he gave me a stack of bits because I've got 7 or 8 of the old metal Warg Riders that were for Lord of the Rings that were super knocked about, and I sat down last night and had converted them up with some bits from the Fireforge kit, and they're great. Like, there's lots of options and there's lots of character. The weapons on them are a little bit on the chunky side, so I did have to pick and choose, but nah, they definitely work well. As far as medals, Jono, what's jumped out at you?
Footsore, like we've mentioned, they sort of were the ones who did V1. All the Footsore medals, I believe they're all Paul Hicks sculpts. I know some of their other stuff, they've got some other sculptors as well, but I think the Baron's War was pretty much all Paul Hicks. Someone can correct me in comments if they know different. And that's probably the medals I'm most aware of.
Yep. Well, they are, after all, the ones made for the games, so...
Yeah. But look, there's so many boutique medal producers out there that I'm sure you can probably find 3 or 4 others. Medbury have the 100-Year War stuff, which is not quite time period correct, but almost. Some of it will work, some of it won't.
Their range is explicitly split into medieval and 100 Years War. The medieval portion of it is much smaller than the 100 Years War range. It's like, I've got one of their knights just as a painting project that I picked up at CanCon. And like, for them, I actually, when I was at his stall, I said, what would you grab for Baron's War era? And he walked me through it, and basically what that boils down to is you're looking for figures that have the surcoats split up the front, not the sides, no bassinets, and no plate armour. Are the really big giveaways. You're sticking mostly to that mail. We also had a look at the Wars of the Bruce range from Antediluvian Miniatures. They look really nice and reasonably period appropriate. I think the Wars of the Bruce are basically like near
almost 100 years later.
Yeah, it's King John's grandson's era, isn't it? And his son's era.
Yeah, something like that. That time period, anyway.
Yeah, it's with Edward more so.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's some of their... I suspect if you start digging around, you'll find lots more. It's a reasonably well-supported period. You just got to pick and choose what figures from what era. I've seen people using their Bretonian miniatures from Warhammer Fantasy for it.
I know this guy that uses his orc figures for it.
Yeah, he's a local, isn't he?
Yeah. No, I mean, there's plenty of opportunities because it's pretty basic in terms of, like, requirements for infantry. If you're trying it out, proxying a lot of different sort of fantasy or whatever is probably perfectly acceptable, depending on who you're playing against.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, how we found it overall? What are our thoughts on Baron's War after having, played a couple of games? I mean, you've got 2 games under your belt. I managed to sneak in a 3rd game with a friend.
Yeah.
What were our thoughts? What was the paradigm for how we were playing? Obviously, I think we said when we discussed our retinues earlier that we're running super generic 500-point forces, which is a half-size game, 4 to 5 units aside. None of the special rules that you can stack onto units. It was literally just base profiles. Yeah, like what were our thoughts for our first game? Was kind of we stuck to kill points,
Yeah.
just figuring out the rules, and just played a scenario, like a super generic deployment zone. What were your thoughts there for that game, Jono?
Yeah, so the first game was fairly not non-lethal. It was, I think, we just kept throwing common units, so my knights against your knights and stuff like that. We also played pretty defensive. We both used the defensive reaction quite a lot, and then we also were using the +1 dice once we realised that existed to saves and stuff like that. So yeah, off the banners. So we were pretty low casualty rate. It was fun. We were learning the rules, so it was pretty slow. There's lots of like referencing into the rule book, flicking between pages.
Putting up Facebook posts on the Barons War group chat and getting a response from the rules writer within like an hour.
Yeah, and then realising that we should have read that because it was in black and white right in front of us on the page we looked at.
Yeah, absolutely. But we spent probably 15 minutes looking for that rule.
Yeah, we did.
But yeah.
No, so like really good. Like despite the fact that it was slow and we were flicking around the rules a lot, it was a lot of fun.
And it made sense.
Yeah, made
As
a lot
you're
of
making
sense.
decisions, it made sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were a little bit concerned at first because we were like, does anything actually die in this game? Because I think we both lost like 4 or 5 figures each.
Yeah.
It was really, and like you killed a couple of my knights, I killed a few of your peasants.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
no, it was good, but yeah.
And then our second game was a lot quicker, a lot more lethal. It was an objective game, and the piggy in the middle deployment, it was deployment L, I think, in the rulebook, and it was basically 4 objectives, which ended up with the deployment of them were in the corner. And yeah, that was a lot more lethal. That ended up coming down to a regicide win to me, which was that was a bit of a surprise.
Well, it was super tight. I mean, like, so
Yeah.
for those who aren't familiar with the rules, the deployment zone basically, there's a whole stack of different deployment zones, but the deployment zone L forces one player to deploy within a central 12-inch line from short edge to short edge, and then the other player has 6 inches in from either short edge.
Yeah.
So you kind of end up with this situation where the one player is stuck in the middle, the other players split across 2 long sides, but then the objectives we played, they couldn't be within 12 of the centre, they couldn't be within 18 inches of each other, and they couldn't be within 6 inches of the table edge, which means you're basically forced to put them out on each corner within relatively easy reach of my warband and very much not easy reach of Jono's.
Yeah, but after turn 3, it was super close. We were, I think, on 6 objectives each, because you count, in that deployment, or in that mission type, you count 1 point per objective at the end of every turn. So at the end of turn 3, we're on sort of 6 each, and then it was pretty close. I think that if the game had have kept going on, it probably would have swung Jackson's way, just with some of the casualties I'd taken.
Yeah, basically Jono threw his entire force, so he looked at it and went, I need to concentrate on one portion of your army. So he threw his levy out on one flank to chase down some archers, or grab one objective that I hadn't contested, and then chase down some archers on another objective, which, you know, there was 8 levy and there was 4 archers. The levy would generally always win that. And then he threw the rest of his army at sort of his nearest objective, where I'd amassed most of my force but slightly less, and he'd taken worse casualties than me. He had less activations because I was running 5, he was running 4. Yeah, and I was kind of getting ahead on the objective bit by bit. And then we had this really amazing moment where you, I think, stood and shot my...
I shot your Baron. I charged your Baron with my Baron and Knight.
Who was only like 2 figures.
Yeah, that's right. They killed just enough to take you down below half.
And put enough morale penalties, because obviously I'd lost a couple from the archers, I lost a couple from the 2 guys, so I had 4 morale penalties, and then I had to take a break check. And I then became broken, and then you issued an order to your archers and ran my Baron down.
Yeah, charged him with 5 male armoured archers, which, when broken, auto hit, so Jackson had to take 5 saves, no shield saves.
So, and obviously I have a weary broken Baron, so it's who only has like a couple of miniatures left. Yeah, so it was a really cool thing, because in this particular scenario, regicide was a thing. Not all the missions have a regicide clause where if you kill the opposing leader, that's it, but in that case it did, and that just ended the game.
Yeah, so that was really interesting, because it was starting to swing against me, and then I turned around and won it in a couple of good dice rolls. I think the game has sort of, I mean, I've played 2 whole games, so I'm the expert, but I think that it's really showing that there's a lot of tactical depth to it. There's plenty of opportunities to pick up a game that you've potentially thought you might be on the losing side of.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree on that. I mean, my other game that I played, that was probably the most lethal of the 3 games I've played. And that was entirely a case of, like, my mate had pulled his War of the Roses figures out just to try and give the rule set a test. He's now bought into the game.
Perfect.
This probably, we'll say it later, but this probably was my Darts Forsaken moment for the month, in that it was my only game with mounted knights, or mounted figures. So he had 3 knights on horse with his Baron, and he'd deployed them out on the flank to avoid my archers, and then he ran them straight up the middle of the table, or straight across the middle of the table, to then be in position to support his infantry push. And he managed to get, I think he was like 10 inches away from a unit of levy. But obviously they're weary, they've double activated, they're not going to be able to do much.
Yeah.
And he didn't have anywhere to support. So I threw my levy in thinking, well, I've got like 60 points of levy versus his, I thought it might have been 70 points of levy versus his 100 and something point, Baron with knights.
Mm-hmm.
Went straight in and rolled well. He rolled badly, and my green levy killed 3 knights in one go. Broke his Baron, who then had to flee, and then obviously I spent the game chasing the Baron down because the Baron rallied.
Yeah.
But it was a really interesting game because it's you're trying to attack at just the right moment. Because if you slam, as I think you said, if you slam a sort of veteran unit into a veteran target, like a veteran unit of knights into a veteran target, you're not going to get anywhere.
You're not. Yeah, you've really got to sort of pick and choose what you want to effectively kill.
Yeah, and then try and work out how to funnel the activations to get it.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to try and base out activations off things. The other thing is that units block line of sight in this, which is something that's fairly common in most rank and flank games, but isn't common in other games. So, like, for example, in our game, I had my little block of 2-handed axe guys and my levy, and then my big blob of knights, and you had your archers, and I didn't want you shooting up my levy because obviously they die to a stiff breeze comparatively, so I stuck them behind my knights, and then once my 2-handed axe guys had taken some casualties, I hid them behind my knights. And you can't charge what you can't see, so like you get this really interesting thing where you can screen units with other units. You're then trying to, you might be in a situation where you have a unit behind your Baron. The Baron soaks the first couple of attacks, and then you double activate the unit behind them.
Yeah.
Try and bring him into line of sight, and then smack a charge onto something that's exposed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it quite tactically rewarding.
Yeah, it's quite a good rule set. Like, there's a lot of depth. It's pretty simple to pick up as a rule set.
All the stats are the same for units.
Yeah, the stats are common across different units. It's what armor they're wearing, and then there's a bonus for weapon. But once you when we first looked at it, we thought, man, there's lots of modifiers in the game. But once you wrap your head around it, it's not that bad.
Really very little. Like,
yeah.
I know a lot of people said when we moved from V2 bolt action to V3 bolt action that, never wanted to play another game with as many modifiers as V2 because it was just mentally
It was horrendous. Yeah.
Which you didn't realise until in hindsight you played some games and went, that was actually really taxing. And I was looking at Barons while going, do I really want to go back there? That's a lot of modifiers, that's a lot of things that stack on other things. But, we've played 2 games, we've already got the gist of it. The variety in the units generally is going to come from the special rules attached to them and the weapons loadouts and equipment loadouts. Some of the units can't be taken as veterans, some of the units can't be taken as green.
Yeah.
Everything has a very similar profile. So
yeah, and the builder, the online builder, is pretty good. There's some text variances you just got to be a bit aware of, but in terms of the stat lines, it will add on your mail armor and that, so it makes it easy to sort of keep up with what's happening.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's probably an essential for players looking to get into the game, especially when you're trying to wrap your head around it. Having that as a handy, quick reference.
Yeah.
Just don't trust the text on the special rules, because there was a couple of the special rules where we worked out that there's a reasonably substantial difference between the text in the rulebook and the text in the army builder.
Yes, we should probably have taken note and sent in a ticket, but
Yeah, I don't think it actually has a ticket system. I don't know. It's something to query. Yeah. But no, I definitely thought it was an engaging game from the 3 games I've played.
Yeah. So what's the future for Baron's War for you, Jackson?
Well, I think probably broadly for our community, we have probably 8 or so guys who've bought kits or have appropriate figures and are looking to get in further. You and I are probably, and Dave as well, the only ones to have really played games in our friendship circle. I definitely think we're going to see, probably try and get a league running maybe at Outpost. That'd be cool, something different.
Yeah, that would be very cool.
My focus needs to be on UTC at the moment as far as my regular wargaming goes, but after May, I want to play a lot of Baron's War.
Yeah.
For my current hobby side of things, I'm going to keep working away at my orcs at the moment and just continue to proxy them. I've been looking at some of the figures for the Warhost range. I'll grab some of them to supplement it, and then I want to play some Warhost as well as Baron's War, but I'll probably just play Baron's War first. I do. Just wrap my head around Baron's War.
I want to do that too.
Yeah.
Play some Warhost.
But my intention is that basically as soon as I get my hands on the King John supplement, which is sounding amazing, I want to make a decision about what faction I'm playing and what figures I'm buying. I like the footsore medals. I probably don't want to do the plastics because everyone who's gone out and bought them has got the plastics. So I'm going to be, that person and try and see if I can find some different figures. Yeah. I want to supplement it with the footsore medals. I want to use some of the plastics, but I definitely want to reach out and try some different things. But for context, I don't know if anyone has been following it, but and I don't know whether we said this earlier in the podcast. My mind is slipping on that. But the King John supplement's got 7 new retinues in it. They sound like they've got some either subtle or major variations. Mercenaries don't.
Yeah.
So they didn't need to take the green portion of the troops. Apparently, the Scots can be unpredictable unless you keep them around their leaders, but then they hit really hard. Kind of sounds almost like that quintessential Games Workshop Warhammer Orc force, where it hits hard but it's super unpredictable. Apparently the Welsh are kind of more like a hit and run skirmishy type of army. The Flems apparently have better sort of sergeants and line infantry rather than knights and other stuff. Sort of southern French are more towards the skirmisher and the hero kind of vibe. So yeah, it sounds like there's lots of variety. Once I've got that and I've had a chance to read up more on the history, I'm going to decide what figures I want to buy because they're just too nice.
Should be good.
Yeah. How about yourself? What's your plans for expanding your force, playing more Baron's War?
Lately I've been, the last couple of weekends I've spent playing with my 1-to-1 scale model of my car in preparation for my upcoming 10,000 kilometre holiday. So I've been a little bit off on the hobby stuff, but I want to finish my 500 point retinue. I'm a decent way through painting. Got a bit more to go. I've got sergeants and knights to do pretty much totally and archers to finish. Once I've done that, I've got some horses and stuff as well, but I'm just going to have a bit of a sit down and I've started sitting down and planning some more purchases to expand the force out to 1,000 points. I'll also be trying to make it a Saga army at the same time. I have the Age of Crusades book, so we've got some other people playing Saga locally, so yeah, just try and make it a 2 for force. And then once I've done that, I'll probably, unless I feel like I need a break from painting humans, I'll paint some elves up for Warhost.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Warhost, again, because we're recording this half a week or a week later than when we were originally, they've previewed and put up for pre-order the new elf commanders.
Yeah.
Those figures are lovely. They're a very different aesthetic to the quintessential fantasy elf, in that they're probably not as heavily armoured and kind of ornately armoured as some of you'd see in sort of your Peter Jackson Tolkien elves and your Warhammer elves and some of those other figure ranges. But they're beautiful figures.
They're so nice. And in person, they're better than they look on the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm super keen on grabbing the Levy orcs with spears and stuff to bulk out my stuff because they're just so good.
I should also just take this chance to say that they've been Andy Hobday's been putting a blog post up of the back history of Warhost. There's 2 chapters up at the moment. I think there's a 3rd one coming if it hasn't dropped already.
It's already dropped. I sat down and read them all.
I haven't read the 3rd one yet, so no spoilers, please. But I've read the first 2, and it's really cool. The world building he's doing in this is going to be sweet.
Yeah, no, the world building is really nice. It's really generic fantasy, but different.
Yeah.
It's things that you'd recognise, and that's, I think, the real vibe for the Warhost side of Baron's War is that it's it's generic fantasy with a twist, and I really like that because it's not anything that's super wacky and out there. Because that's the thing is like you see a lot of these companies release their fantasy game or their science fiction game, and they've got these amazing ideas, and it's all this really wacky stuff. And then you kind of can't borrow figures from other stuff. You probably want some terrain kind of specifically built or designed around that particular stuff.
Yeah.
You kind of, if you're making your own narrative gaming scenarios and missions and stuff, there's a bit more of a drive to stick it or ground it within their particular lore. Whereas the really kind of sandboxy generic fantasy that they've kind of gone with, which is, it's not reinventing the wheel. You can probably repurpose some other figures you may have. You can probably repurpose terrain. If you build a campaign or narrative series of games for it, you don't need to pay too much attention to sticking to being like 100% lore accurate, because you can kind of get away with, well, this is my interpretation of the world. But also there's enough meat and potatoes and difference in there that it's different. I mean, their magic system is different. It's kind of got a grape sundering kind of vibe to it, which again, actually, that's probably touching on Chronicle 3, so I won't wreck that for you, Jono.
Oh,
but
good.
there's some difference.
You can see all the elements coming through from sort of the Tolkien and all those sort of other huge names of fantasy in the past, but like you said, with a twist, and also designed around it's all world building for a game which is built on a pretty solid rule set. So
no, that's definitely worth something exploring. Do you think we will? I'd like to maybe get some narrative campaigns or something going with this.
Yeah, that would be
we can do that.
I reckon we could do that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm even a games day where we linked all the games or something.
Yeah, we'll get some Barons War under our belt. We'll get the rules knuckled down. I know there's a couple people keen to play a game. One of the guys has been asking me, Seraph's been asking me to play a game, so we'll get some other games under our belts, get some more players, and we'll have a look at it. So we'll probably do some kind of narrative thing in the future once we get Warhost kicking as well. Alright, so I think we've probably added far more since our technical glitch than we really intended. But here is the most important question of the podcast, Jackson. Who has been forsaken by the dice in your hobby?
Okay, so as I think I alluded to earlier, my mate Dave this month, when we played a game of Barons War, so, Barons War, Dice Forsaken moment for the Barons War episode.
Perfect.
As I said, his 3 heavily armoured veteran knights on barded horses getting run down and lynched by a mob of dirty peasants. And it was a thorough lynching. Like, the 8 guys went in, and I've run, Green Levy into knight units in the games we've played, and they die. So, they do nothing. They just bounce off it. And these just mobbed and ripped apart these poor knights. And Dave is renowned for having, and I say this being your friend, Jono, and Richard's friend, our colleague from last episode, they're renowned for having bad dice. Dave's dice are worse. They're literally the worst set of dice I've ever seen any wargamer ever roll, and they're always bad. But this was a particularly egregious moment.
One of the gaming nights, I joined the Mundane Nights. He nicknamed me Dave 2.0.
Yeah, Dave Alfsby.
Yeah, that's right. Dave Alfsby. Yeah. Yeah, cool. I had nothing on the first night of recording, and I still don't have a Dice Forsaken moment. I've only got a few games in. Yeah, particularly for me. Usually it's me.
Yeah, usually it is you.
Yeah, I've had a few games, but I haven't really played a lot, to be honest. Life getting in the way.
Yeah. Oh, you can only do what you can do.
I'll do my best. I'll do my best to be forsaken by the dice before the next episode.
Yeah. Nah, absolutely. Yeah. Try not to. It's not much fun. Yeah. Now, what are we doing for next episode, my friend?
I think we decided that we're going to do another Barons War episode.
Yeah. I think we could probably do with chatting about army building. And not in the sense of, hyper-efficient list building, but ideas of how to use a 4-point unit, a 4-man unit of something in support of a bigger unit from the couple of games we've played. Maybe different weapons upgrades, some of the different funky special rules you can stack on units.
Yeah.
Yeah, not so much the macro efficiency kind of stuff, more the kind of, how to get the most out of these different units. Yeah. Maybe we
Yeah.
could actually, just a thought, and obviously spitballing here on the podcast, why don't we go through each of the units in the list, just the standard retinue in the main rulebook, and we each build them a different way.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, and go like something like that. And go, this is the way
Yeah.
you could use it, and this is how I'd intend to use it, and then we could test it.
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
Yeah. Now, also coming up, obviously, as we've indicated, we do a monthly episode. Now, A will be away for 3 and a bit weeks for Worlds in Europe, and yourself, you've just alluded to the fact that you'll be away on holiday, driving across Australia, so from
Yep.
the west coast to the east coast and back. So that's going to be a bit of a factor in our recording coming up. So I think our intention is to try and record through that, but maybe there might be a dip in the audio quality or something there, and we're just going to
Yeah.
warn you guys ahead. Obviously, if we're not recording at home, it's a bit hard to lug a microphone across to Europe and back, or
Yeah, we'll do our best. We'll see what happens.
yeah. But no, that should be fine. Yeah, so no, we'll roll with that as we go. And so, Jono, what do we always say to close out our episodes?
Just play better.
Or blame your dice.
Thanks for joining us.
Down with King John!